My name is Cora Shaw. To understand me now, you would need to visit my home on a quiet, tree-lined street where the loudest sound is usually the laughter of my children spilling out of the open windows. You'd see the small garden I'm tending, where imperfectly shaped tomatoes ripen on the vine, and the porch swing where I drink my morning coffee, watching the world awaken. My life is a tapestry woven from simple, sturdy threads, the scent of baking bread, the weight of a sleepy child in my arms, the quiet companionship of a man who knows the difference between holding a hand and chaining it. But to understand the profound peace of this simple existence, you have to know the silence that came before it, a silence born not of tranquility, but of fear. To understand the strength in these walls, you have to know the story of the gilded cage I once called home, and the day I finally learned how to fly. My story truly begins not with an ending, but with a memory, fragrant with lavender and the crisp, sweet smell of old paper. I was 6 years old, and my world was the size of the small, sun-drenched apartment I shared with my mother. She was a librarian, and she smelled of the things she loved most, the lavender soap she used and the aging pages of books she brought home. Her name was Helena, and she was the sun my small universe orbited. I remember one afternoon, curled on our worn velvet armchair while she sat at the kitchen table, mending one of my dresses. The needle dipped and rose in a steady, comforting rhythm. Light from the window caught the dust motes dancing in the air, turning them into a private galaxy just for us. "Cora, my love," she said, her voice as soft as the thread she was using. "Do you know why I love books so much?" I shook my head, my pigtails bouncing. "Because every story," she whispered, leaning forward as if sharing a great secret, "is a map. Some maps show you how to find treasure. Some show you how to escape a monster. And some just show you that you aren't alone on your journey." She smiled, a gentle, wistful expression that I would later understand was tinged with a sadness I was too young to see. "I want you to always remember that, my little star. No matter how lost you feel, there is always a way back to yourself. You just have to find the right map." I didn't know then that she was handing me a map for a journey I would have to take without her. A few months later, the light in our apartment seemed to dim. My mother grew quiet, her humming replaced by long silences. She tired easily, and sometimes I would find her staring out the window, her hand pressed against her heart as if trying to soothe a hidden ache. "Are you okay, Mama?" I would ask, tugging on her sleeve. She would blink, as if returning from a great distance, and pull me into a hug that felt a little too tight, a little too desperate. "Just thinking, little star. Just thinking." The day she left, it was raining. A soft, persistent drizzle that blurred the edges of the world. She kissed my forehead before I left for school. "Be good for Mrs. Miller next door," she said. "I have a doctor's appointment. I'll be back for dinner." But she wasn't back for dinner. Mrs. Miller, a kind woman with flour-dusted hands, gave me cookies and told me my mother had to stay at the hospital for a little while. "Just for a rest," she said, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. A week later, a woman in a severe navy blue suit came to the apartment. She had a tight bun and a clipboard, and she spoke in a voice devoid of all warmth. She told me my mother's heart had been too weak. She said the word deceased as if it were a filing term. I didn't understand. "She's just resting," I insisted, clutching the worn teddy bear my mother had sewn for me. "She's coming back." The woman sighed, a sound of pure administrative impatience. "Your mother's gone, Cora. It's time to be a big girl now." That was the day I learned that being a big girl meant the world could shatter around you, and you were expected to sweep up the pieces by yourself. The state-run children's home was a world drained of color. The walls were a pale, sickly green, the floors were cold linoleum, and the air smelled of bleach and boiled vegetables. My name became a number on a list. My grief became a silent, heavy stone I carried in my chest. I learned to hide my teddy bear under my thin mattress, because, as a girl named Leah with knowing, old eyes told me, they take anything that makes you look weak. I spent 8 months in that gray, sterile world. I learned not to cry, not to hope, not to expect anything from anyone. I told myself my mother was on a very long trip, and one day she would find me. That was the lie that kept me breathing. Then, one day, he came. A man named Marcus Shaw. He was tall and well-dressed in a charcoal suit that looked out of place in the drab director's office. He had my mother's dark hair, but his eyes were a cool, distant gray. The director, Mrs. Dalton, treated him with a fawning respect she showed no one else. "Cora," she said, her voice unusually soft. "This is your father." I stared at him. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd never heard. Father? My mother had never spoken of one. He knelt down, trying to meet my gaze, but his own kept flickering away. "Hello, Cora," he said, his voice strained. I didn't know about you. A friend of your mother's found my name in an old address book after she passed. I had to take a test, to be sure. He told me he was an architect, that he lived in a beautiful coastal city called Port Blossom with his wife, Alice. He said they wanted me to come live with them. A single question burned through the fog of my confusion. "Where were you when she was sick?" I whispered. His gaze fell to the floor. "I wish I had known, Cora. I would have been there." It was the first lie he ever told me. And in the years to come, I would learn that his life was built on a foundation of such elegant, convenient untruths. He took me home that day. The house in Port Blossom was magnificent, a modern structure of glass and cedar that overlooked the ocean. Sunlight poured into every room, glinting off polished hardwood floors and pristine white walls. It was the kind of house you see in magazines, perfect and untouchable. Alice, my stepmother, met us at the door. She was lovely, with a warm, open face and kind blue eyes. She smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, a scent so close to maternal comfort it made my heart ache. "Oh, you must be Cora," she said, her smile gentle. "We are so happy you're here." She showed me to my new room. It was larger than our entire old apartment, with a canopy bed, a shelf full of new books, and a window that looked out onto the sea. It was a fairy tale room for a little girl who had stopped believing in fairy tales. "This is your home now," Alice said, her voice full of genuine hope. I tried to believe her. I truly did. I went to a new school, wore nice clothes, and learned the polite, quiet manners expected of me. Marcus was a provider. He paid for piano lessons, bought me expensive birthday gifts, and asked about my grades with a detached, professional interest. But he never tucked me in at night. He never told me a story or ruffled my hair. He was a perfect portrait of a father, framed and hanging on a distant wall. Alice was the one who tried to bridge the gap. She packed notes in my lunchbox that said, "Have a wonderful day," and left hot chocolate by my bed on cold nights. But she was trying to reach a girl huddled behind a wall of glass, and her warmth couldn't quite penetrate it. Years passed. I became an expert at fitting in, a quiet, well-behaved ghost in their beautiful house. I learned to say, "Dad," without flinching. I learned to smile for family photos. I learned that love, in this house, was a matter of keeping up appearances. I was 17 when I found the box. It was in the back of Marcus's study, a place I was not supposed to go. Tucked away in a bottom drawer of his filing cabinet was a small, wooden chest. Inside, tied with a faded blue ribbon, was a stack of letters. The handwriting was my mother's. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. "Marcus, I know you asked me not to contact you again, but I'm writing to tell you that we have a daughter. Her name is Cora. She is beautiful and bright, and she is your stubborn chin. I am not asking for anything from you. I will raise her myself. I thought you had a right to know she exists." The letters spanned years. Her quiet updates, his cold, formal replies sent through a lawyer, offering money but demanding no contact. The last letter was dated 2 months before she died. "Marcus, the doctors say my heart is failing. I'm scared. Not for me, but for Cora. If something happens to me, she will have no one. I am begging you, as the only other person on this earth who is a part of her, please don't let her end up alone. She is your daughter. She deserves a father." The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. He had known. He had always known. He hadn't been an unknowing savior who rescued me from an orphanage. He was the man who had left me there in the first place. His story, his entire relationship with me, was a lie. I confronted him that night, the letters shaking in my hand. For the first time, I saw a crack in his perfect facade. His face went pale, his composure crumbling. Your mother and I, it was complicated, he stammered. I thought it was better for you to have a clean start. A clean start? I echoed, my voice raw with a decade of buried grief. You left me in a place with no love, no comfort, no anything. You let me believe I was completely alone in the world. Alice rushed in, her face etched with pain. She looked from me to Marcus, and then she said the words that defined their life together. We were trying to protect you, Cora. Protect me? I laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourselves from the inconvenience of the truth. That night, I understood the map my mother had tried to give me. The world was full of monsters disguised as saviors and gilded cages disguised as homes. And the only person who could truly lead me out was myself. College was my escape. I chose Northwood University, a sprawling campus hundreds of miles from Port Blossom. I found my sanctuary in the hushed, cathedral-like halls of the main library. I built a fortress of books around my table in a quiet corner and disappeared behind it. I was studying education, drawn to the idea of creating the kind of safe, nurturing spaces for children that I had never had. I was content in my solitude. Until him. Excuse me, a voice said one rainy afternoon. Is this seat taken? I looked up from my notes. He was tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that seemed to crinkle the corners of his eyes. His arms were laden with heavy medical textbooks. No, it's free, I mumbled, pushing my books aside. He slid into the chair opposite me. I'm Owen, by the way. Cora, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded toward my books. Education. Going to shape young minds? Something like that, I said. Kids are honest. They don't know how to pretend. He smiled, a genuine, understanding smile. I get that. I'm studying to be a pediatric surgeon. He tapped a thick anatomy book. I like the idea of fixing things before they're broken beyond repair. His words resonated in a place deep inside me I thought had turned to stone. For weeks, we became silent companions at that library table. The quiet between us wasn't empty, it was comfortable, a shared space where we didn't have to perform. He never pushed, never pried. He'd just occasionally slide a cup of tea across the table or share a pack of gummy bears. One evening, as we were packing up, he said casually, "You have a beautiful smile, you know. You should use it more often." I blushed, looking away. I'm not much of a smiler. That's okay, he said softly. I've got enough for both of us for now. Slowly, tentatively, I began to let him in. We started taking walks after the library closed, our conversations meandering from classwork to dreams to the quiet fears we both held. I told him about my mother, about the home, about my father. I told him in disjointed pieces, testing the waters. He never judged. He just listened. It sounds like you've been carrying a heavy load all by yourself, he said one night, as we sat on a bench overlooking the campus green. I'm used to it, I said with a shrug. You don't have to be, he replied, his gaze steady. You know, in surgery, the most critical moments often require two pairs of hands. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. That winter, under a sky full of stars, he kissed me. It wasn't a demanding kiss, but a gentle question. And for the first time, I felt something other than fear or obligation. I felt seen. With Owen, I wasn't the damaged orphan or the disappointing daughter. I was just Cora. And it was beginning to feel like that was enough. He was my first love, my first taste of what a healthy, supportive partnership could feel like. He was my safe harbor. Which is why, when the storm came, I was so utterly unprepared. His name was Adrian Thorne. He was an associate professor in the political science department, brilliant, ambitious, and devastatingly charismatic. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, the most fascinating creature he had ever encountered. He noticed me after a presentation I gave on childhood developmental trauma. He cornered me afterward, his eyes intense. That was remarkable, Cora, he said, his voice a low, compelling hum. You have a fire in you. A deep intelligence. Most people just skim the surface. You dive deep. His praise was intoxicating. After a lifetime of feeling invisible, Adrian's focused attention felt like a spotlight. He made me feel powerful, not fragile. He took me to sophisticated dinners with his colleagues, debated philosophy with me until the early hours of the morning, and told me I was destined for more than just a quiet life in a classroom. "You have a voice that could change things," he'd say. "Don't waste it." While Owen was offering me a quiet garden, Adrian was offering me the world. The breaking point came in our final year. Owen was offered a prestigious pediatric surgery fellowship in Switzerland. It was a 3-year program, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "Come with me, Cora," he pleaded, his hands holding mine. "We can build a life there. A real one. Quiet, happy. Just us." I was terrified. Leaving the country, leaving the little bit of ground I felt I had finally claimed, felt like leaping off a cliff. What if I failed? What if I wasn't enough? All my old insecurities rushed back. "I need time to think," I told him. And in the space that Owen respectfully gave me, Adrian swooped in. "Switzerland," he scoffed gently over a glass of expensive wine. "That's running away, Cora. Your life is here. Your potential is here. Don't shrink yourself to fit into someone else's small dream." He made it sound like choosing Owen was choosing to be less. Choosing Adrian, on the other hand, felt like choosing to be more. He proposed a month later, with a diamond ring that was flawless and impressive, and a speech about how, together, we would be an unstoppable force. I chose the spotlight. I chose the promise of a life so grand and successful that no one would ever see the broken little girl hiding inside. I called Owen and told him my decision. The silence on the other end of the line was the sound of my safe harbor sailing away. Our wedding was an event, a perfectly orchestrated performance of success. Crystal, champagne, and a guest list of influential people. In the dressing room, Alice helped me with my veil, her eyes full of a gentle concern. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" she asked softly. "Adrian is a wonderful man," I replied, looking at my reflection. "I didn't ask about Adrian," she said. "I asked about you." I smiled, a brilliant, brittle smile, and didn't answer. The first year of our marriage was a whirlwind of social engagements and professional triumphs. Adrian was promoted to a tenured position, and I began teaching at a prestigious private elementary school. We bought a stunning condo in the city's most desirable neighborhood. Our life was, by all outside measures, perfect. But the cracks began to show in small, almost imperceptible ways. Adrian's suggestions became critiques. "Are you sure you want to wear that dress, Cora? It's a little simple for this crowd. Let me handle the conversation about finances, darling. It's not your strong suit. I know you're close with Alice, but perhaps we could see them a little less. Your family's past is rather complicated, and it doesn't really fit our new life." I told myself he was just looking out for me, helping me navigate a world I didn't understand. I was so desperate to prove I had made the right choice that I ignored the slow, steady erosion of my own identity. Then I got pregnant with Eva. It was unplanned. I was ecstatic, terrified, and hopeful all at once. I bought a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties and presented them to Adrian after dinner one night, my heart pounding. He stared at the booties, and his face, for a moment, was a mask of cold fury. "What is this?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. We're going to have a baby," I whispered. He stood up, pacing the length of our perfect living room. "A baby? Now?" "Cora, we had a plan. A 5-year plan. A child throws all of that into chaos." "It's not chaos, Adrian. It's our baby," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "It's your mistake," he snapped. "You were supposed to be careful." I should have left then. I should have packed a bag and walked out into the night. But the thought of being a single mother, of failing so spectacularly after choosing this life, was paralyzing. So I did what I had learned to do my whole life. I apologized. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He stopped pacing and came to me, his expression softening into one of patronizing forgiveness. "It's done now. We'll manage. But Cora, from now on, major decisions, we make them together. And you follow my lead. Understood?" I nodded, a wave of cold dread washing over me. I hadn't just married a man. I had signed a contract of ownership. The birth of our daughter, Eva, changed me. Holding her, I felt a fierce, primal love I had never known. For a while, I thought it might change Adrian, too. But he saw her as an interruption, a noisy, messy complication in his well-ordered life. "Can't you keep her quiet?" he'd demand when her cries woke him. Other mothers manage. His words became my inner monologue. I wasn't a good enough mother. I wasn't a good enough wife. I was letting myself go. I stopped meeting friends for coffee. I stopped reading books. My world shrank to the four walls of our condo, and my only goal was to keep the peace, to keep Adrian from getting angry. When I became pregnant with Ben 2 years later, I hid it for as long as I could. When I finally told him, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "Again? Are you actively trying to sabotage our lives?" The verbal barbs began to have a physical edge. A grip on my arm that was too tight. A shove against the wall when I dropped a plate. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was my fault for provoking him. Our third child, Nora, was born during a week Adrian was at a conference. He said he couldn't get a flight back. The nurse looked at me with such pity in her eyes that I had to look away. By then, our home was a battlefield. I was the lone soldier trying to shield 3 small children from the shrapnel of their father's rage. Eva, my oldest, had learned to become invisible when she heard his keys in the door. Ben would hide under the kitchen table. The breaking point, the moment the map my mother had given me finally became clear, came one Tuesday night. I had tucked the children into bed and was tiptoeing back to the living room when I heard a tiny whisper from Eva's room. I pushed the door open to see her small form trembling under the covers. I sat on the edge of her bed. "What's wrong, my sweet girl?" She looked up at me, her big, serious eyes full of a fear that was far too old for her 6 years. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't like it when Daddy's home. He makes the air feel sharp. He makes the air feel sharp." In that moment, something inside me shifted. It was no longer just about my survival. He wasn't just breaking me anymore. He was breaking my children. He was teaching my daughters that love looked like fear, and my son that power looked like cruelty. The monster was no longer just chasing me. It was coming for them. And I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and liberating, that I had to get them out. I had to find the way back, not just for me, but for all of us. My escape began with a secret. I started siphoning off small amounts from the grocery money, stashing $20 here, $50 there, in an old shoebox in the back of my closet. It was a pittance, but it felt like a fortune. It felt like hope. My next step was a hushed, frantic phone call to the only person I knew I could trust. "Alice." I whispered into the phone from the pantry, the only place in the condo without an echo. "Cora? Sweetheart, is everything okay? You sound." "I'm fine," I lied automatically. Alice, I need to ask you something. Do you still have that friend who works in family law?" There was a pause, and in that silence, I felt her understand everything I wasn't saying. "Yes," she said, her voice suddenly firm and clear. "I do." "Cora, what's going on?" Tears I hadn't let myself cry for years began to stream down my face. The air is sharp here, Alice. And the children are learning to be afraid." "Oh, Cora," she breathed, and I could hear the heartbreak in her voice. "Stay on the line. I'm going to help you." We made a plan. A quiet extraction. I would pack a few bags with essentials for me and the kids. Alice would help me find a small, furnished apartment in a town a few hours away, paid for in cash under a friend's name. Marcus would not be told until after I was gone. The day was set for a Friday, when Adrian had an all-day faculty retreat. But the universe, it seems, has a cruel sense of irony. On Thursday evening, the night before I was to leave, Adrian came home early. He found me in the bedroom, a half-zipped duffel bag at my feet. The shoebox of money was sitting on the bed. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice was unnervingly calm, the kind of quiet that precedes a hurricane. I froze, my heart seizing in my chest. We were going to visit Alice for the weekend," I stammered. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "With a bag full of cash and your passport? Don't lie to me, Cora." "Not now." He advanced on me, his eyes glittering with a terrifying rage. He saw the betrayal not as an escape from his abuse, but as an act of defiance against his ownership. He backed me into the corner of the room. You really thought you could take my children and just walk away, he hissed, grabbing my arms. You ungrateful, stupid woman. After everything I've given you. He raised his hand, his face contorted in a mask of fury. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact, my daughter's words echoing in my head. The air is sharp. And then, a sound cut through the terrible tension. The sharp, clear chime of the doorbell. Adrian froze, his hand still raised. He looked toward the door, bewildered. Who the hell is that? The bell rang again, longer this time, more insistent. Get rid of them, he snarled, shoving me toward the door. And if you say one word, Cora, I swear to you. My legs felt like water as I walked to the door. I peered through the peephole, and my breath caught in my throat. Standing on our doorstep, his expression etched with a grim concern, was Owen. I hadn't seen him in almost a decade, but I would have known him anywhere. He was older, his face leaner, but his eyes were the same. Those kind, steady, brown eyes. Who is it? Adrian hissed from behind me. It's an old friend from college, I managed to say. Open it, he commanded. And smile. With a trembling hand, I turned the lock and opened the door. Owen's eyes found mine immediately. He took in my terrified expression, the unshed tears, the faint shadow of Adrian looming behind me. Then he looked past me at Adrian, his gaze hardening. Owen, I breathed his name. Cora, he said, his voice a low, reassuring rumble. Alice called me. She was worried. She said you might need a friend. Adrian stepped forward, puffing out his chest. Well, as you can see, she's fine. And she's my wife. So you can leave now. Owen didn't even glance at Adrian. His eyes stayed on me. Are you okay, Cora? He asked softly. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. But he saw it. I'm not leaving without her, Owen said, his voice quiet but absolute. Adrian laughed. You have no right. When a woman looks that scared in her own home, Owen cut him off, his voice dropping to a steely calm that was more intimidating than any shout. Every decent human being has a right. He took a step into the apartment, placing himself between me and Adrian. From down the hall, I heard a small cry. It was Nora. Then Eva's small voice, Mommy. The sound of my children's fear broke the spell. I need to go to them, I said, moving past Adrian. He grabbed my arm. We're not done. Yes, Owen said, stepping forward and firmly removing Adrian's hand from my arm. You are. Adrian lunged, but Owen moved with a surgeon's precision, deflecting the blow and maneuvering Adrian against the wall, holding him there with a calm, unshakable strength. Get your children, Cora, Owen said, his eyes never leaving Adrian's. Get your bags. We're leaving. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. I ran to my children, scooped Nora into my arms, and took Eva and Ben by the hand. As we walked past the entryway, I saw that the apartment door across the hall was ajar. Our neighbor, a quiet retiree named Mrs. Miller, was standing there, her phone held up. It's all on video, Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Everything. I've already sent it to my son, who's a police officer. Adrian's face went white. The fight drained out of him, replaced by the panicked realization that his perfect world had just imploded. Owen released him and came to my side. He gently guided us out the door, into the hallway, toward the elevator, and away from the life that had almost consumed me. As the elevator doors slid shut, I looked at the faces of my 3 children, huddled close to me. Then I looked at Owen, my old safe harbor, who had come back for me across a sea of lost years. The air in the elevator was still and quiet. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was breathable. And as we descended, I felt not like I was falling, but like I was finally rising. We didn't go to the apartment Alice had arranged. Owen took us to a women's shelter, a discreet, welcoming house where the first thing they offered me was a hot cup of tea, and the first thing they offered my children was a playroom full of toys. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, therapy sessions, and the slow, painstaking work of untangling myself from Adrian's life. The video from Mrs. Miller, combined with a decade of my meticulously documented fear, was enough to secure a restraining order and, Eventually, full custody of my children. Marcus, faced with the undeniable truth of his son-in-law's cruelty and Alice's quiet determination, provided the financial support for my legal battle without a word. But the real healing happened in the small moments. It happened when Eva started drawing pictures of our family again, this time with everyone smiling. It happened when Ben stopped hiding and started asking me to read him stories. It happened when Nora fell asleep in my arms, her small body relaxed and free of tension. Owen stayed. He didn't move in, he didn't push for a title. He was just there. He brought us groceries. He played pirates with Ben in the shelter's backyard. He listened for hours as I talked, finally giving voice to the years of pain and fear. One evening, as we sat on the porch after the kids were asleep, I asked him the question that had been haunting me. "Why did you come back, Owen? After all this time?" He looked out at the darkening sky for a long moment before answering. "Because I made a mistake all those years ago," he said softly. "I gave you space when I should have fought for you. I let you believe that my love was conditional on you choosing it. And I promised myself if I ever got a second chance, I wouldn't make that mistake again. When Alice called, it was my second chance." We moved into our own small house 6 months later. It wasn't grand or impressive. It was a little bit crooked, the floors creaked, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. But it was ours. It was safe. One night, long after the children were asleep, I sat down and wrote a letter. "To the man I once married. You told me I was weak, that I was nothing without you. You tried to shrink my world to the size of your insecurities. You almost succeeded. But you underestimated something. You underestimated the love of a mother, the resilience of a woman who was taught to read maps in the dark, and the quiet strength of a girl who survived losing everything once before. I am not broken. I am remade. My life is not the grand performance you envisioned, but a quiet, beautiful, authentic song. And its melody is made of my children's laughter, my own rediscovered voice, and the steady, gentle rhythm of a love that doesn't demand, but cherishes. You didn't destroy me. You freed me." I folded the letter, walked to the small fireplace in our living room, and dropped it into the flames. I didn't need to send it. The words were for me. Owen came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, and we watched the paper turn to ash. "What was that?" he asked gently. "The end of a story," I said, leaning back against him. He kissed the top of my head. "And the beginning of a new one." Outside, the stars were bright over Port Blossom. The air was cool and clean, smelling of salt and damp earth. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, on solid ground, with a clear map in my hand, finally, truly home.